one person to speak to. If you could just give one option. If you're saying it's time to come down to the table and sit down and have a conversation, please give me one obstacle. Give us one obstacle that if a meeting was called next month, what would be that one obstacle that will prevent us coming together just like this, with no change, no one was pushed or coerced to come, and just to sit down and say, let's be unified, let's come together. What would be one obstacle? One person could just speak to that. What would be one obstacle? Brother Tucker.
Pride. Pride. This is the way I see it. It ain't no other way to see it. And if I come and I find out that the way I perceive things to be infringes upon my teachings for the last however many years I've been preaching, then I'm going to be made to look less than. But pride comes before fall. And I just believe that if we are sincere, if we really want to go to heaven, then I don't mind being wrong here on earth so that I can make it right before I leave earth, so I can make it into heaven.
Come on now.
But I have to be humble to do that. We have a lot of people in the brotherhood who may not be as humble as possibly they should be. And whenever you have pride, I mean, you got something very serious that needs to be addressed. So I would say pride.
I'm going to stick to that one. Second question. As we saw in the video before, there can be a lot of church fights. We're good at swinging at each other. But it seems like the majority of church fights within the Church of Christ takes place, and because we stick close to the scripture, takes place between the preacher and the elders. Why is that?
Well, that was going to be the reason I say you have a problem with people coming to the table. Because there's a disconnect between the elder and the preacher. So even if the preacher shows up, he don't have a common answer. So he don't have a reluctancy to go. And if you're going to make a productive meeting, you really have to bring the elders and the preachers together. Because it's obvious a power struggle. In our churches, we go between elders and preachers. There's no secret. That's why many preachers won't even ordain elders. They don't want to go through the fight. But that's still God's way. I mean, that's the evangelist's charge. And I believe many of them are going to lose their soul because they did not carry out the command. Ordain elders and set things in order. That's our charge. We have to deal with whatever comes with it. But certainly, you hit the nail on the head. And when men love the Lord, you have men who qualify, and they meet those characters, you won't have those kind of problems. Amen. Because those men know that God resisted the pride. He gave grace. The elder must lower himself. And so must the minister know that none of us got power. And God haven't given us. That's the problem you will have in here.
I always tell myself every time I go to an elders meeting, okay, the elders I'm in sales, they're in management. As long as I stick to sales, then things are profitable. When I start getting my nose in management, then I get in trouble. So I'm just going to stay in sales, y'all.
Also, if you're in sales, the elders have to understand you're in sales. I think it's a two-way street. One thing myself and eldership, we get along wonderful. And that's because outside of church, we go to lunch together, we do things together. I know they got my back and vice versa. And also, we all have our lanes. My lane is lane 1. And Randy wants to stay in lane, I'm not getting in lane 2. And the elders know their lanes, and they stay in their lanes. And I think we can maintain those lanes and a working relationship. I think it'll be a beautiful thing. It's when we start crossing over each other's lanes and stuff because of the need for power or control. That's where we get in trouble.
Let me, and I'll let you to speak. I want that ushers us into the third question. There are some elders and leadership. It's obvious sometimes when you look on the website, you can click on leaders, and they'll give a list of all the elders. They'll give a list of the deacons. But why is the preacher reviewed as staff next to the custodian? When elders have meetings, the preacher is not allowed to sit on all the meetings. But there are some who've given the frustration. How is it that I ordained you and then you lock me out the meeting and tell me what I should and cannot do? And there's not a mutual. You can put back up your mic. There's not the mutual respect that it is the preacher's job to set the church in order. But when he sets the church in order, that's not an event. That's an ongoing. Ordaining elders can be an event. Setting the church in order is separate and ongoing. Why is the preacher many times viewed as staff? Or you'll hear members say, we pay you or we hired you, when really the Lord pays me. But I ain't preaching, I'm just moderating. Brother Tucker, then Brother.
Thank you, Brother Williams, for putting us up for the firing squad. Before you even pose this question, based on the previous question, my answer is going to stay consistent. And this is just my perspective on it, and I know others will follow. But the reason that I feel we have so much of a disconnect or separation or between the minister and the elders and traditionally why there's been a power struggle, I base it on one word, and that is study. There's been a lack of study. We know what we've been taught, we know what we've heard preached, but go back and study. And when you study, those roles are clearly defined. And they're not even close to being the same thing when you go back and study. Now, there are some overlapping responsibilities with both of those positions, okay, in that both of us have responsibility for the flock. That overlaps whether you are a minister or whether you are an elder. But as far as the designation and the work that is described, it couldn't be any clearer. But the issue is, many folk have not availed themselves to the study, to really investigate what the scriptures are saying. And while I'm at it, before I pass it off, I'm going to say this. If you really want to understand leadership in the Lord's church, you have to begin before Matthew. I'll drop it.
I can't wait to say something. But you know what? We get personal here. Being in Alva Heights, the first time I ever ordained elders, and I will just be honest with you, it was a growing thing. First of all, I didn't know what I was doing. It was the first time. I mean, it's a beginning to everything. You gotta get into the water and see if you can swim, right? So and then there was a growing pain for elders as well, because they were young elders that had never been elders. So there has to be an expectation that we're going to learn together and grow together. However, I think the mistake that we made in the church is that we run to the epistles, and I'm going to come back, Brother Tucker, and have a different view on that, because we go to 1 Timothy 3 and Titus, and we describe the character of the elder. We call that qualifications. But Jesus, in John 13, taught leadership before any epistle was wrote. And he taught it by putting a towel around him, getting down on his knees and wash his dirty feet. And then he said, happier if you didn't know what I needed. You know, them guys that understand what he was teaching them was how to lead his church. And elders and preachers have the same problem. That we ain't willing to get down and just be dirty servants. We want to be chief priests and all the hierarchy that comes with it. We get this from the world and we bring it into the church. Go to the top, be the big guy, be the boss, be the chief. But Christ said, I'm going to stop with this. Chief among us, you want to be chief? Serve you.
This presents.
I think so. In contradiction to those, I think sometimes you get a preacher in a place where he is the minister. He's the only one who want to call him control, and it becomes a dictatorship. To where it's him, he's doing everything, nobody's considered, he's making all the decisions, and it's basically him. To where when others do come along, it's time to break this stuff up. They're just tearing up the church. So I think there's another side to it as well as what I'm saying. There's some preachers who can make it bad for themselves as well as the men that come after them because they just have the power in their hands. And that was me, myself, and I. Y'all gonna do what I say. And you can mess up a minute because no man gonna sit there and just be humiliated day in and day out. I mean, all my job, I'm a director. When I come to church, I can't say nothing because you're the preacher, you have all power, all control in your hand. It doesn't work like that. And I think that's not what God intended for the church either.
And hopefully we're talking about mutual respect.
Exactly.
Don't disrespect me, but include me. I think
Exactly.
a lot of our frustrations is when we exclude a group because you're not, in a particular area or stage. Which ushers us into our last question. There are many churches who've been looking for a preacher. They say that he must have X number of years of experience. He must have a college education. He must have these credentials. He has to have 17 kids. And they create this criteria for what a preacher is. And so we encourage the preacher to continue to learn. He needs to keep reading. He needs to keep studying. He needs to keep growing. And we have conferences. We have lectureships. We have places we go as ministers where the only ones that are at that venue are just ministers. But on the other side, we're saying that leadership must be respectful. To my knowledge, there are no, and correct me if I'm wrong, there are no elder conferences, deacon conferences, where elders and deacons and even the preachers come together at conferences and other elders from across the brotherhood are able to share with other elders. Give them books. Give them courses that they should go through to continue to develop. Do you feel like it would be beneficial for our brotherhood in the Church of Christ to have a venue where not just preachers are showing up, conversing amongst each other, but that we bring all of our leaders together, elders, deacons, and preachers, to sit down and to equip our elders to be better, equip our deacons. The deacon's role is much more than locking up the door and driving the bus. It's a spiritual role. But for the congregation that's not seen, do you feel, because it's not enough to just talk about problems if we don't even bring to the table some type of solution? Would you speak to that?